admissible, as you say, in court because it's primary. It's
Sure.
the kind of evidence that you witnessed personally as opposed to the, as you indicated, the survey evidence.
Yeah.
Now, I want to bring up a question. John Conyers, you mentioned, who is the Democratic congressman from the Detroit area, has been, for about 35 years. I grew up in Detroit. I can remember pre-marked UAW ballots that were handed to us at Chrysler Corporation before we voted. And of course, the rationale was, don't you want to have people in there who will support your best interests? We know who those are as committeemen and so forth, so we should do it that way. Anyway, Mr. Conyers has chaired two committees, one to investigate Ohio, and the other one most recently with Jim McDermott here in Seattle, that is an unofficial committee because he can't get enough people to officiate at it, I guess, or something, but they have to meet off campus elsewhere to investigate impeachment proceedings. Can you comment on the progress of either of those committees?
Well, I mean, the committee itself, Mr. Conyers has still been actively involved in pursuing the recount, which is now scheduled. That the recount has been in court at least 3 times, and you mentioned John Boniface, National Voters' Right Institute, and that will actually be going to court. John has discovery motions out, which are very interesting. John is very aggressive. I talk to him regularly. I look forward to that litigation. And recently, of course, there were the indictments in Cleveland of 2 polling and election officials, the first actual criminal indictments. J. Kenneth Blackwell also, it's in Lucas County, but J. Kenneth Blackwell was forced to ask the entire Lucas County Board of Elections to resign when you don't essentially fix your jurisdictions and you don't secure the ballots and you allow Republicans keys, 1 key to get in instead of the 2 keys. There's problems there. So to a large extent, the real battle now is being fought at the recount. And we really can't move forward with counting the ballots because they're still locked down. J. Kenneth Blackwell decided to lock them down. They're usually public record after we decided another miracle in Perry County should be reported, that one precinct voted 124%, another 120%. But what they do here in this instance, right, is that they then decert and recert, and then they call you a liar. It's like, wasn't that? Look at the new official. That was just a preliminary certification. What we've also found, which is equally disturbing, which we looked at the recount as it proceeds, is they claim 10,000 people registered to vote on the same day in Perry County in 1977. No one recalls this happening, this huge surge within the county. What we also know from a subcontractor who worked at installing the voter registration data in the Secretary of State's office, that the Secretary of State has override and overwrite capacity, and that the state of Ohio voluntarily went into the Matrix program, turning over all their state databases to Homeland Security and other federal agencies, including Selected Service, the IRS, and the Ohio State Troopers. So the guy who installed that system, who wishes to be subpoenaed for a variety of reasons, including agreements he has on not revealing stuff, did reveal to the Free Press that the amount of people registered to vote was tens of thousands higher than when he finalized that system on November 2nd. Thankfully, the new Diebold equipment is digital, and it's one-stop shopping for fraud and theft. They do everything from digitizing voter registration, and the computer can read whether it's good or not signatures by setting it at a 70 to 80% recognition factor to the final tabulation, all on one machine. So that's where that is. And I haven't seen John since August 6th, where I talked to him. I testified on C-SPAN at the election committee. I testified at both. The one in Columbus they had at the city council because he was thrown out of the state capitol. So I testified at both of those committees, and I supplied as much information I could to Conyers for the Conyers report. And a lot of the original, we've now written a 100-page summary, executive point, a smaller version of what we call the Bible or the Yellow Pages. And in the new press in the spring, we'll be putting out a book of nothing but documentation. So when they keep saying there is no evidence, it's all the evidence we never got to pursue in court, although we were sanctioned, right? Threat of sanctions. The Attorney General moved to have a sanction for even considering investigating the election, which is interesting in and of itself, because we were given under statute 10 days for discovery. They decided to invoke the Ohio Rules of Civil Procedure, which says they don't have to answer any discovery for 14 days. So their interpretation was, we got no discovery, but they got discovery the second 10 days. And when we protested and asked the Chief Justice to recuse himself, because that court, the Ohio Supreme Court, was set by $14 million in illegal corporate anonymous money that Cliff Arnebeck uncovered. And they have fixed that. They decided that those donations will now be legal to either party. So that is fixed. You can now give corporate money directly to the Democrats or the Republicans. So that's what's going on. Yeah.
I'm trying to discover and to establish motivation. These apparently are religious people, and for common motivation, you can interpret scriptural phrases in agreed upon manner. And they're not unfamiliar with the holy wars. We had the Crusades a little while ago, and it happens in the Mideast. So they're you're dealing with unethical people, completely unethical people, and what they want is a theocracy.
Sure,
and they don't want a democracy, and they definitely want a theocracy. That's their intent.
And J. Kenneth Blackwell pushed to have issue 1 put on the ballot to change the Ohio Constitution to outlaw gay marriage, which was already outlawed by statute, and the Republicans dominate all the courts. And not only that, but to outlaw all forms of domestic partnership, including a couple cases where boyfriends beat their girlfriends and they weren't prosecuted under domestic violence. It says you have to go to jail, but under older laws that doesn't remove you from the home for simple assault. And he did that with Rod Parsley, the televangelist who runs a 10,000-seat super church, who is now going around Ohio essentially telling the 1,070 so far patriot ministers to openly defy the law and preach politics from the pulpit. So yeah, no, I agree with you totally, and that's the ascendant force in Ohio we were up against. Go ahead.